Good evening, everybody. Sorry we had a little delay. We got held up by some cheese curds tonight, but we welcome to our program on Wisconsin Whey. Um, and we are broadcasting or podcasting or Zooming from Wisconsin. I'm a native Chicagoan. Um, third generation Chicagoan, and I also have a home in Wisconsin, about 25 miles from where our speakers are speaking. I'm in Spring Green, and you can see some of the Wisconsin hills behind. And they're in the historic town of Mineral Point, which is about 25 miles from me right now. And tonight, they're going to talk about Wisconsin cheese, which is more than just a rural local delicacy. It's like talking about French wine. It's something that's more than just something in France. It's a treasure for the nation, and they are in the historic town of Mineral Point, which they'll tell you about this town. I think some of the buildings are from the 1850s or earlier, right, Nicole?
Yes, earlier.
Earlier. And yes, and anyway, these people who are talking tonight have put together a book, Wisconsin Whey. I'll hold it up for you. Oh, good. And it's this is a treasure. It's about the history of Wisconsin cheese, the cheese making in the Driftless area of Wisconsin. And this is one of the most beautiful areas of Wisconsin. And anyway, they are going to talk about how they put this book together about the cheesemakers that they all interviewed for the book. And I did have a chance to meet these people at their Republic of what you have your cooking
Republic of Letters.
Republic of Letters.
Yeah.
And the cooking school is called what now again? Because I've had your class there.
The Book Kitchen. It's
The-
located in the Republic of Letters.
Yes. And you're right
Once
in the book's kitchen right now where you give your cooking classes.
I am in the Book Kitchen currently, yes.
Yes. So anyway, I will let them begin. Nicole is going to uh, give the backgrounds of all of these wonderful people who collaborate on the book and to give a talk about a lot of stuff tonight. So Nicole, let the cheese making begin.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for having us. We're really excited to be here tonight. I am also a native Chicagoan. I was born and raised there until about 6 years ago when I moved to Mineral Point. So my career started in Chicago. I was first an elementary school teacher and got tired of fifth graders, and I moved on to French Pastry School as a student, and I fell in love with pastry. I had a bakery shortly after leaving the French or graduating from the French Pastry School in Edison Park, right across from the Metro. So we did a lot of breakfast pastries. We had a lot of commuters for about 5 years, and I was doing I'm sure some of you have heard about the For Love of Chocolate event that the French Pastry School used to put on. And I was doing an event there, and I ran into my old chefs, Jackie Pfeiffer and Sebastian Canone, and they asked if I would come back to be a chef instructor at French Pastry School. And so the next day I sold my bakery and became an instructor there. And now I live in Mineral Point, and I still work a little bit with French Pastry School. They have an online program called the Butter Book, and so I do a little bit of content development with that. But my primary focus is the Book Kitchen, which is a teaching kitchen housed in the Republic of Letters bookstore and historic Mineral Point. And we teach a lot of different classes using cookbooks. We have food tastings and anything food related. And so I spend most of my time here nowadays. Keith, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Nicole. So my name is Keith Burrows. I'm one of the owners of Republic of Letters. which is a general interest bookstore in Mineral Point. We opened about 2.5 years ago. But besides the fact we're general interest, we share space with the book kitchen, and so we have a very heavy emphasis on cookbooks and food writing. I came to book selling via science and engineering, but have in the past been a food writer for various publications in Wisconsin, along with Leslie. And so we had written about many of these cheesemakers in the past and had long wanted there to be a book to highlight this particular region of cheesemaking. I'll talk more about the Driftless area once we've done with the introductions. But Leslie, do you want to?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Leslie Damaso. I'm the co-owner of Republic of Letters, but inside, I'm sitting across the building of the bookstore. My building is called Button Hill Music Studio. So I'm a musician and music teacher. So I teach voice and piano lessons in this room. You can see the piano in the back. And I host concerts as well, but also I'm a food writer and performer. Kristin?
I'm Kristin Mitchell. I've been in Mineral Point for 31 years. I originally grew up outside Madison. I'm a graphic designer. I've been a graphic designer for over 30 years. 14 and a half years ago, I added a publishing company. So we mainly focus on Wisconsin books and or Wisconsin authors. And it was just, the opportunity to collaborate with these other folks and do a book about cheese was an easy thing to do. So
I should add, Leslie and I both have Illinois connections as well. We both went to school at the University of Illinois down in Urbana-Champaign.
So you've got that makes you legitimate for the culinary historians of Chicago. You've got a kosher connection. Thank you.
Well, we've all made our way to the Driftless, and I don't think anyone will ever leave. So
that sounds ominous. But maybe I could spend a couple of minutes just explaining what the Driftless is. It may be a phrase that isn't very familiar for everyone. So the Driftless or Driftless area or Driftless region is a geological region in southwestern Wisconsin, southeastern Minnesota, northeastern Iowa, and northwestern Illinois, but more than half of it is in Wisconsin. And it's in a region that wasn't plowed flat by glaciers during the previous ice ages. So most of the Midwest is pretty flat, and that's because glaciers came through and destroyed all the hills and pushed everything flat. For various geological regions, this little part of the Midwest was ignored by those glaciers. And so it's driftless because we don't have glacial drift, which is the rocks and pebbles and sand that get pushed by the glacier and sort of fill in all the valleys and smooth everything out. So without the glacial drift, we have rolling hills, lots of narrow creek valleys, a little bit more topography than you're used to seeing in the Midwest.
It's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous. It's a beautiful place to live, and the geology does impact the history, the sociology, the economics of the area, and was one of the drivers for why there's such a unique brand of cheesemaking in the Driftless region. Maybe Kristin, do you want to start with talking about how the book came together as an idea?
Sure. Although I think maybe Nicole should start, because really the whole impetus for this entire project started with a cheesemaker and in the book kitchen.
So Joe Burns, Lafayette Creamery, Bronco Cheese. Joe Burns did a cheese demonstration at the book kitchen one evening. I'll let Leslie tell the backstory on how he got to the kitchen, but he came here and did this lovely presentation, and the cheese was just amazing. And we thought, well, how can we have 12 cheesemakers, come to the book kitchen once a month? And our discussion led to, well, we should just make a book about cheese. One of the things about the Driftless that I'm sure we'll kind of come back to throughout the discussion is the Driftless is filled with these amazing food artisans and producers, not only in cheese, but in all other areas of food. And all four of us are foodies, and we just thought collectively that we needed to highlight the food scene in the Driftless. I don't know the reason, but sometimes for some reason, the Driftless just isn't well known for its cheese, or excuse me, its food scene as well as other regions throughout the country. And so collectively, we thought we wanted to really showcase what the food scene is like in our region. And what better way to start than with the cream of the crop? And so after Joe did his presentation at the kitchen and tasting at the kitchen, I talked to Keith and Leslie about, you know, we really need to highlight other cheesemakers here. And then we brought in Kristin as a publisher, and she was really on board with the project. And so initially, Joe selected the 11 other cheesemakers for the book. And when the four of us discussed how the project was going to be laid out, we originally thought we would just do some sort of a guidebook and maybe highlight some interesting things about each cheesemaker. So when the photo shoot rolled around, the photographer is also Chicago-based photographer, Paul Strabbing. He does a lot of food photography. When we spent a week traveling to each of the 12 cheesemakers, and it was the most glorious week you could ever ask for. It was this time last year, and it was just a really lovely summery / fall, kind of transition. So when we visited each of the cheesemakers and we started to learn about them and their history and their story and their love of cheese and how they make their cheese and what their animals are like, the story developed into it was just so much more. There was so much more depth to their story than what we were initially giving them credit for. And so we regrouped and we said, okay, this is going to be a coffee table book. This is not going to be just a guidebook. So that was kind of just how the project kind of snowballed after that. So,
Well, and the writer
Since we're trying to,
we
Go
hired,
ahead.
to do the writing was tasked with, the directive of a guidebook. So give us 400 to 500 words on a cheesemaker. And Judy, the writer, came along on all the, on every shoot at every cheesemaker with the photographer and the group. And after, she sent us her first run through, and it was just, she felt very held back. So we made the decision to really give her free rein. Write as much as you want, tell the stories about the makers, and they were all individual. And maybe, she could, which happened organically, was to focus on a different, maybe focus on a different aspect of cheese making that naturally happened because there already was so many different things about each of the makers. So that evolution from a guidebook changed drastically, like Nicole said, that week with the photography, which turned out spectacularly well, and just letting Judy just go.
Since we're trying to impress you with the Chicago creds of everyone involved, I should mention that Joe Burns was also living in Chicago. I think selling wine when he connected up with a cheesemaker in Wisconsin, and he said, I could be selling your cheese here at the Green City Market. I think you could have a lot better sales in Chicago, and he volunteered to be that salesman. And they ended up then becoming the cheesemaker and then buying out the original owner and runs the company now. So it's a lot of Chicago people involved. But one of the things I want to point out is how much of a community cheesemaking is, both across Wisconsin, across the state, but really in the Driftless region, and how much of this book is about our own community. So we knew a lot of these cheesemakers just from life before writing the book. And Nicole mentioned Joe was doing a class in the book kitchen. Well, the reason that he connected up with Nicole was that he ran into Leslie at the grocery store, and she used to teach his son piano 10 years ago. And they got talking, and he'd seen the social media for the bookstore in the kitchen and said, "Oh, you're doing really cool things. I'd love to do a class or something." And so that's how that connection made. But it's very much these people that we profile in the book are community members. We see them every day. They're a crucial part of the fabric of our towns.
I see somebody ask in the chat, Peggy noted there are 1,600 licensed cheesemakers in Wisconsin. What was your criteria for selecting people? And I'm gonna just share that Joe made those decisions, and we all supported all of his decisions, which in hindsight worked really well for us, because then we can't really we can't take any heat for not picking or picking somebody. So
Well, the only criteria
this-
you did have was that the cheesemaker had to be within the Driftless region. So that was our criteria, but Joe really hand selected the other 11 makers.
And there are some larger cheesemakers in there, and we could have profiled employee cheesemakers of some of those larger, but we decided to focus more on the entrepreneurial small cheesemakers, where you had an owner of the factory that was a cheesemaker or that was a farmer.
And because, so like Keith was describing the Driftless area earlier in this conversation, because it was unglaciated, we have these smaller patches of land. So that really guided, the land guided even like the cheesemakers, so you can't have a huge farm. So it was really, and the grasses and plants here that the cows like, they're really unique to this area. So these smaller patches of land kind of helped, the cheesemakers along as well, and to keep it small and artisanal as well.
We did also have a question in the chat to list who the cheesemakers are. So I'm just going to list all of the cheesemakers, but we can also talk about some of the specific cheeses they make. But in alphabetical order, the cheesemakers we profiled, or the cheese companies we profiled, are Bluemont Dairy, Bronco Cheese, Capri Cheese, Carr Valley Cheese, Cedar Grove. We had a profile of a cheese affineur who just ages cheese but doesn't make her own cheese. That's Bear Valley Affinage. Hidden Springs Creamery, Hook's Cheese, Landmark Creamery, Nordic Creamery, Rowley Cheese House, Schrader Case, and Uplands Cheese.
Keith,
The one of
Keith,
those, the one you might be most familiar with would be Uplands, that makes Pleasant Ridge Reserve. It's won best cheese in the country 3 times. It is the most award-winning cheese in the country. They make only 2 cheeses at Uplands. They make Pleasant Ridge Reserve, and they make Rush Creek, which is a seasonal cheese when the cows come off pasture. It's a very fatty cheese, sort of the size of a wheel of brie, wrapped in spruce, and it's a soft, buttery, creamy cheese that's perfect for the holidays. Joe at Bronco Cheese also sells a lot in the Chicago market. A lot of their volume is baked cheese, what they call brunusto, but it's a Usto style cheese, so it's browned on both sides, and you generally cut it into slices or cubes and then reheat it. It doesn't quite melt, it goes soft without melting, and it can be cooked on a barbecue, kind of similar to Greek halloumi as well. But a lot of the cheesemakers are pretty small, and you probably won't have heard of them. Schrader Case is a small cheesemaker in Darlington, Wisconsin, who I hadn't heard of until Joe suggested them for the book, even though they're only about 15 miles from here.
Keith, aren't a number of these cheeses sold in Chicago?
Most of them are. There may be 1 or 2 that aren't available in Illinois, but the vast majority of them should be available at either specialty cheese stores, high-end grocery stores, some of the farmers markets.
The Madison Farmers Market carries a lot of, they're actually vendors at the Madison Farmers Market. I know Hidden Springs, Hooks, Schrader Case, they all participate in the Wisconsin market. or excuse me, the Madison market.
And if you would like to order all of the cheeses featured in the Wisconsin Whey, I'm sure you could get them online. You can order them online from Fromagination in
Or
Madison.
directly from, a lot of them have direct sales as well.
Or you can all take a trip north, come to
Yes.
Interpoint, stop into Hooks, stop in Darlington along the way at Broncow. And then if Hooks is not open, there's a really great little liquor store and market right across from from Hooks Cheese, who has expanded his cheese selection to incorporate many of the cheesemakers in the book. And then we will also have a small, a good-sized grocery store opening up in Minter Point in the next month, and that too will carry a lot of these cheeses.
And that's actually one of the gratifying things about doing the book has been that it really has helped raise awareness and driven some change. Yeah, it actually, a year ago, it was quite hard to get some of these cheeses locally, apart from going to the farm. And, there weren't that many outlets that would sell these cheeses out here in the Driftless area. And like Kristin just said, we've already seen some change where now there'll be we actually have 3 great cheese vendors now, because we also have a cheese wholesaler that moved to town after the release of the book, called Over the Moon Cheese, that supplies its cheese to restaurants, many of them in Chicago.
So the book has really driven a lot of other businesses in Mineral Point, which we're really proud of.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing I think we all, not that it was probably a surprise to any of us, but these cheesemakers are the most delightful, humble people, and they are making, like Keith alluded to, world-class, world award-winning cheeses. And they are just the nicest people. They don't feel that they compete with each other. They are extremely supportive of each other. So for us to be able to highlight these humble superstars is just, I think that's been another outcome of the book that I don't know if any of us had expected. And we're being asked to participate in festivals and to be able to bring a cheesemaker along, and for people to meet the maker of their favorite cheese has just been so much fun to watch.
And next week, hosted by the Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin, there's a festival in Madison, a multi-day festival called the Art of Cheese. And if you guys want to take a trip here, like that would be a great opportunity. They have many programs. So I suggest just check out their website and see. They have like dinners and tours to the creameries, dances, cooking classes, cheese making classes. So I recommend looking into that Art of Cheese Festival.
Peggy has a question about these cheesemakers raise their own cows? Some of them, yes. Uplands specifically is a farm that they raise their own cows, as well as Hidden Springs. They actually have sheep's milk, and Capri Cheese is a goat farm.
And the farmers
Yeah, so
that are not, sorry, Keith, that are not using their, maybe not have their own animals, they're sourcing the milk from one farm, or very, very, very refined group of cows or makers that they're working with.
So, for example, Hooks Cheese, which is here in Mineral Point, just down the road from us, they have 5 farms that they work with. All the farms are within 5 miles of the factory, and they've been working with the same 5 farms for over 40 years. It's a very loyal relationship. They're not shopping around for the cheapest milk or anything like that. Yeah, so it's technically a farmstead cheese if they are producing the milk and then making the cheese. But a lot of the cheesemakers either buying milk from neighboring farms or from a co-op.
Your book it's just it's so beautifully written, and it has such, between the biographies of the cheesemakers and the history, you give a nice section on the history of cheesemaking. But can you give just a few bullet points about Wisconsin's history of cheese making, like how it began, and just a few
Yeah,
little
absolutely.
tidbits, morsels of it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So was no history of cheese making before the arrival of the Europeans. Um, uh, Most of the settlers in Wisconsin in the early 1800s were coming from Northern and Central Europe. Many of them were coming from countries that had rich cheesemaking traditions. But for most of the first half of the 1800s, cheesemaking was an on-farm activity. Most farms would have at least one cow and not more than a few. And the farm wife would make cheese from the milk, and it would be purely for their family's consumption. Uh, as the population of Wisconsin grew, uh, farm cooperatives started to form where they would collect milk and all make cheese at one house. The first person to do this was a woman named Ann Pickett, and in 1841, I believe, not certain of that date, but approximately, she started the first cheesemaking co-op where she would get milk from her neighbors, bring it to her house, and make cheese. The first real factory, as not just cheesemaking in the home, was in 1846, created by a guy named Chester Hazen. He was an immigrant from upstate New York, which was was the primary cheese making region of the country at that time. And from about 1864, when he started his factory, to about 1890, cheese factories started popping up all over Wisconsin. But quality was very low. They were mostly buying milk, and farmers, in order to stretch the price they would get for their milk, would water it down or adulterate it in other ways. Cheesemakers would use various fillers to try and get more, dollars per pound for the cheese. It was kind of an unregulated Wild West, and the quality was quite low. That began to change in 1889 when the state created a new board, a new position to oversee the cheese commissioner. And then in 1890, the University of Wisconsin-Madison people as cheesemakers. At the time, one of the professors in that program was a Stevens Dairy Science program. It's at Babcock Hall, named after him. He developed some tests that could be done. And so cheesemakers began to be able to test their milk as it was coming in and make sure that it hadn't been watered down or other things done to it. In 1915, Wisconsin became the first state to require cheesemakers to be licensed. And so we've come out of that Wild West period now, and from 1890 to 1815, the industry had really professionalized. And by 1915, Wisconsin cheese was beginning to have a reputation as high quality cheese. That led to continued growth in the industry, and the number of cheese factories peaked in Wisconsin at 2,800 in the 1920s. But these are mostly crossroad cheese factories. So they'd be located at almost every crossroads out here in the country because it was difficult to transport milk very far. And so the cheese had to be made near the farms where the cows were. But as better roads were built, it became easier to truck milk further. And so cheese factories began to centralize. And so from 1920 something, when there was 2,800 cheese factories, up to 1990, when there was 126, there was a huge amount of cheese factories being bought out that entire time, even though the volume of cheese produced in Wisconsin continued to increase every year. In the 1980s, the farm crisis and some other economic pressures caused a lot of dairy farmers and small cheesemakers to go out of business. And so by the 90s, Wisconsin had sort of identified the issue that they were only making the cheapest commodity cheeses, and that a lot of the higher end artisanal cheeses were being made in places like Vermont and California. And that didn't feel like a sustainable route forward for the industry. So the state created a master cheesemaker program. This is beyond the license required to be a cheesemaker. In 1994, and they graduated their first class in 1997. And then also a few years after that, they created the Dairy Business Innovation Center out of the University of Wisconsin-Madison that ran for 8 years. And during those 8 years helped dozens of new cheese factories start up or restart, going from commodity cheddar production or commodity mozzarella production to artisanal washed rind cheeses or mixed milk cheeses or all sorts of different varieties of artisanal cheeses. And that has been very successful, so that over the last 2-3 decades, Wisconsin has regained its position as not only the volume champion of cheese making, making about just under 30% of all cheese in the country is produced in Wisconsin, but Wisconsin is also the #1 producer of specialty cheeses and wins the most awards at all the various cheese competitions. So there was a risk there of Wisconsin becoming a low quality commodity manufacturer, but through good planning and organization, the industry and the state were able to work together and really turn that around to now Wisconsin's the best cheesemaking region in the country. And the Driftless in particular has a very high concentration of very award-winning cheeses. And we talked about the geology a little bit. That's part of what's going on in Wisconsin in the Driftless area. We have all these river valleys that break up the fields. So we don't have big open flat fields, which means it's not great for large scale farming. And it means that we have some of the cheapest farmland in Wisconsin. But that's good if you want to be a small scale farmstead cheese producer. It's more affordable to have pasture land. You don't have the pressure of larger competitors trying to buy your out or quality product, which is what the cheesemakers we profile in the book are doing.
I'm just going to touch a little bit on what Keith noted about the University of Wisconsin and their dairy program, the innovation program. Wisconsin is the only state in the United States that requires cheesemakers to be licensed. Wisconsin and Switzerland are the only places in the world that offer a master cheesemaker ranking.
And we have a few master cheesemakers highlighted in the book. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but a lot.
I was just gonna say, I see a comment in the comments asking about Ann Topham. Ann has actually retired. She is no longer making cheese. We would have featured her in the book if she was. She's mentioned in the book several times because she was a mentor to several of the cheesemakers that are still there. But she still has her farm, but she's not making commercial cheese anymore.
There's also a comment to say something about the cheese cave, Willie Lehner's cheese cave, which is amazing. It's a cathedral style ceiling that he basically dug out himself. And it is just beautiful and smells lovely, and it's pristine, and the picture doesn't do it justice, but it's really stunning.
So as you enter the cave, he has a sign hanging that says, "What would cheeses do?"
And I was going to say, right next to the sign, there's a Buddha statue. So I don't know where he falls, but
I think Scott had something earlier.
Oh, Scott, I think we interrupted what you were going to ask.
I was entranced by what you're talking about. Can you tell us a little bit about Mineral Point? It's such a fantastic, unique town. It's walking back in history. The architecture, who are the people who settled it, and you're in the heart of Mineral Point right now, and it's a treasure for people who want to visit there. But can you describe what Mineral Point is like?
Who wants to take that? Okay. Mineral Point is a small town that's under 3,000 people in population, and it's made up of like half and half families that have been here for generations, the real townies, and artists, and just people from all over the world. So we have a really exciting community and from different backgrounds, different age groups. And I was literally having this conversation today with somebody, how it kind of, being in a small community, it forces you to interact with all sorts of people. And it's really, it's a beautiful thing. You'll go to the coffee shop and people might hop to other tables and talk to each other, which is, I think it's beautiful and unique, and it's a creative place. We have many artists here, potters, musicians, yeah, and just also regular folks mingling with each other.
I don't want to interrupt you, Leslie, but I saw Mike Giebert just joined. I want to say hi, Mike.
Hi.
Mike is a Chicago food writer, friend of ours, who's been to Mineral Point several times.
To answer Scott's,
You can go
just
ahead.
kind of go back on Scott's, Mineral Point was settled in 1827 by the Cornish. And one of the reasons the Cornish decided to settle here was because of the geology, the geography. It's very similar, if you've ever been to Cornwall, walking on a street that goes up or down a hill in Cornwall is just like walking up or down a street in Mineral Point. Very, very similar. The Cornish brought their architectural work with them, which is why we have so many stone buildings built with the limestone rock that, again, we have in excess because of the driftless region we live in. And to kind of touch on what Leslie said too, it's an eclectic place where people discover it, either they have heard about it or they're driving through it, and there's just something that speaks to them. So I think we're this little pocket of culture in the Midwest, just a very deep, rich environment that is really, we have a lot of entrepreneurs here, a lot of entrepreneurial spirit. And I think actually all of us on the call here, the four of us, are all entrepreneurs. We all have our own businesses, our own small businesses in whatever field, we've chosen to work in.
And walking down High Street in Mineral Point, that it is High Street, correct? The main street.
Yes.
It's like walking back in time. I mean, a movie could be filmed there, but it seems a lot of the buildings are from the 1850s original.
Yes, and just
The building.
Oh. I was thinking our chunk of High Street, really, it's so wonderful. We have a chocolatier, we have the book kitchen, the bookstore, the opera house, art galleries, and then the grocery store coming up also, and the library and coffee shops. And it's really, the community really cares about what they want to bring here. And it's literally, we're seeing it in action, and it's just amazing. And these beautiful architectures, it guides you to what it wants to be, and you kind of work with what the buildings kind of say to you. And I kind of feel that that's parallel to how the land kind of works with the cheesemakers, how you work with nature, how you work with architecture as well.
And you mentioned the Opera House. That's a little architectural gem. That's a beautiful opera house, and many major stars from years ago have performed there. I think Jack Benny has performed there, I think. But it's the who's who has performed in Mineral Point.
And actually, just about a week ago, we got a brand new marquee on the Opera House that was restored or rebuilt, but similar to the original style. It's absolutely gorgeous. So if you come to Mineral Point, definitely see a show.
When I attend,
there's a
go
sorry,
go
go ahead,
right
Scott.
ahead. Go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say there's a comment about asking about goat's milk and sheep's milk cheese. We have goat milk and sheep's milk cheesemakers in the book, and both are relatively common and growing in the Driftless area. One example would be Capri cheese. They make goat milk cheese. They got into it because their son was lactose intolerant, and so they just got some goats to milk for him, and it just kind of steamrolled, and they ended up with a bunch of goats and too much milk, and so they decided they had to make cheese.
the newest one here that I don't think we've addressed yet is, can someone talk about the title Whey, Whey?
It is not a misspelling.
You're right. We did it on purpose. Uh-huh. And
Well,
if
and
any,
so
Just a play
if
on.
anyone isn't familiar, when you make cheese, you curdle the milk and you end up with curds, and you end up with whey. Whey is a mixture of sugars and proteins. It can be further processed into, you can make ricotta cheese from it. You can
Ricotta,
make
yeah.
other products from it. But it's not usually the main part that goes into the cheese. But it is, however, a pun for the word whey.
Yes,
And
and I think it must have been like maybe our second meeting, and I love wordplay, and I wanted to be a little cheeky, so I sent our team like a list of everything with whey, like way to go. I don't even remember what the other ones were, but that's where we landed, the Wisconsin Whey. Yeah.
well, we did.
Well-
I think it was important that we not take this book too seriously either. This isn't a tome about cheese. This is, a story, a book, it's a storytelling book. So I think we all agreed it needed to be a little bit more irreverent and just fun.
Well, speaking of irreverent, did you know that Kraft was going to open a cheese factory in the Holy Land?
No.
Yeah, they're going to call it Cheeses of Nazareth.
Oh, geez. Oh,
well,
cheese.
I know Scott is a big fan of puns as well. So
Well, it is a pun and it is light, but really, the word way, like the Wisconsin way, WAY is, this is the way that our cheesemakers make their cheese is because of where they live. And so having the state name in the title, and this is the way that we do it here, it's kind of a play on that.
I will also share that, so we do national distribution, and my distributor was very on the fence about us calling the book The Wisconsin Way because they thought only people in Wisconsin would get it. But we've sold this book globally. We blew through the first run, our first print run, and we've already moved on to our second print run of the book. So I don't think having the word Wisconsin in the title was a deterrent.
And I'm backtracking, but again, Nicole, when I came to your beautiful store after your book debut and got to meet the cheesemakers, I felt like I was in Hollywood meeting all the stars because I've been eating these cheeses in Chicago and in Wisconsin. And here were these wonderful cheesemakers and getting to talk to them and sample the cheese. And I will mention too, for people who might be visiting the area, in another nearby town, Mazomanie, Carr Valley has a cheese shop. It's like getting lost in a candy store with what they offer there. So Carr Valley in Mazomanie is a wonderful shop to go to too. And Nicole, I'm
Carr
going
Valley is sorry,
go right ahead. Oh, Keith,
well, Carr
please
Valley is
stop.
one of the cheesemakers we profile. They're the largest cheesemaker we profile. So Carr Valley is about as large as you could be and still be an artisanal cheesemaker. Any larger, it'd be industrial. They have been around longer than a lot of the other cheesemakers. So Sid Cook, the head cheesemaker owner there, is sort of the grandfather of the modern artisanal cheese movement in Wisconsin. He's been winning awards longer than most of us have been alive. But Carr Valley has done a really good job of scaling up. They make dozens of different kinds of cheese at 3 or 4 different factories. They distribute really, really widely, but still make cheese the old-fashioned way, very much by hand. And one of the things that we didn't get to talk that much about because we focused on smaller cheesemakers who usually the owner is the cheesemaker. They might have a couple of assistant cheesemakers or other people helping them out. But Carr Valley is big enough that they have quite a few cheesemakers working on their payroll. And it's really interesting to see the people who have made that a career. And many of the people working in cheese factories or on dairy farms nowadays are Mexican or Latino descent. And that's been a huge shift in Wisconsin from the farm labor being the kids on the farm, the 8 or 9 kids you have on the farm, and you make them go milk the cows and help make the cheese. It's an industry really that's dependent on skilled workforce that's coming from outside the region.
I just want to go back to Scott had mentioned that he met some of the cheesemakers, and I just wanted to reference what he meant. So our book was launched on March 1st, and we had a launch party at Republic of Letters in the Book Kitchen, and 6 of the 12 cheesemakers were here talking about their cheese. We did a cheese tasting. We had a lot of food that had all of their cheese in it, and so it was just a really big event. And our second event will feature the remaining 6 cheesemakers, or maybe some of the we'll repeat some of them, but our second event we're hosting in the spring, and so we will have a similar style event where you would meet the cheesemaker and be able to taste some of their products.
Oh, and get them to sign the book too.
And get them definitely to sign the book. Yeah, that was really wonderful.
We're also going to be building into that event some cheese making classes, farm tours, cheese factory tours, and the idea is that it'll become an annual festival.
And I took your herb class, Nicole, just recently, and it's as good a class as anyone can get anywhere. It was wonderful. I'll jump for a second from cheese to you, Nicole. You just got back from France because you were working on a book with Jackie Pfeiffer who headed the French Pastry School, who's now living in France, but moved back to France. And I mentioned, I think he's considered one of the world's top French chefs. And again, the French Pastry School in Chicago was phenomenal. So can you tell a little bit about what you were doing there, working on the book, and how you got there, just a little bit, because that's pretty interesting.
Thank you. Sure. So Chef Jackie and I have had a long friendship since I was a student until I owned a bakery, and then as a chef instructor. He's been my mentor for almost 20 years, and he is writing his second cookbook. He retired about 2 or 3 years ago. He moved back to southern France. He's originally from Alsace. He moved to just about an hour south of Toulouse. And he has a little farm, and he grows hazelnuts and peach trees and apple trees and olive trees. I mean, it's really amazing. So he is writing a second book along with Martha Rose Schulman.
His first book won all kinds of major awards, like one of the top awards in the industry. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. Yes, it won James Beard for pastry.
That one was The Art of French Pastry.
The Art of French Pastry was the first book. And so I won't release the name of the second book quite yet, but it's in the works, and it will be out about a year from now. And so I was with the photographer who did the Wisconsin Whey, Paul Strabing. He has a history with French Pastry School. So Paul and I have done a lot of projects together. So Paul and I went out and he did the photography, and I did a lot of food styling and just some pastry. I was the sous chef, so Jackie was bossing me around. But yeah, it was a wonderful experience, and I'm really looking forward to the book. So his first stop on when the book comes out is Mineral Point, so stay tuned.
And we've already talked to you about helping us nab Jackie to talk for the Culinary Historians, which will be, if he does speak for us, and he probably will be his 4th talk to our group over the years.
Great. I'm sure he'll be happy to do it.
Great.
Well, there's a question from Garrett. How large you have to be considered an industrial cheesemaker? And I don't think there is any kind of hard definition. I say Car Valley was the largest cheesemaker we profiled, and I believe they make 24,000 pounds of cheese a year. Does that sound right, everyone? I don't know. We'll say that's the right number. But I don't think there's a hard cutoff, and it's also the case that a lot of these are hybrid businesses where people like Willie Lehner, he doesn't have a cheese factory. He doesn't have cows either. So he has farmers he works with, and when he wants to go make cheese, he gets time at one of his friends' cheese factories, and he goes and he makes cheese, and then he ages it in his caves. And Cedar Grove, one of the cheesemakers we profiled, has served as that home base for a lot of cheesemakers when they're just getting started, or when they're running very small volumes, or they're testing out new ideas. Cedar Grove, like many of the other cheese factories, will let someone else come in for the weekend and make their own cheese. And so a lot of these, they're not competitors. It's they all view themselves as it's one team. Driftless cheese making. The better each of them does, it's a rising tide that helps all of them out. And that was really what impressed me most about talking with them, is how much they were eager to talk up their competitors.
We do not discuss appropriate accompaniments for cheese. We do have a section in the back of the book that talks about storing cheese, eating cheese, troubleshooting with cheese, tasting and serving, but we don't have a whole lot of information on the best accompaniments for cheese.
Yeah. Go to your local cheesemonger.
Yeah.
Just eat the cheese on its own.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, this is not a book that is about the cheeses. It's a book about the people making the cheese.
Well, maybe my question is not quite appropriate then, but are there, well, there's ways when you're drinking wine or judging wine, there's certain things you look for what makes good wine. But are there certain criteria? What makes good cheese? Can any of you address that? Yeah, how can you be like a connoisseur and know that you're eating good cheese?
Well, if you taste it and you feel like wobbly, that's probably a good cheese.
We have some tips and things about selecting cheese and storing cheese and serving cheese in the book. But I'd say if that's something you want to get into more, Anne Saxelby's The New Rules of Cheese is a great little book that's sort of a textbook for buying and eating cheese.
Well, thank you. Anybody have anything else they want to add, or any other questions you want to answer? If not,
I would like to add something.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Okay, so Mike Gebert, you mentioned a little bit ago. He also has a book with Whey in the title, but it's W-A-Y, and it's the Chicago Whey. I know Scott and I are both been interviewed, or there's content in the book, and it's coming out, I think, February 3rd, which is all very exciting. So all these ways.
And we've got to find a way to get Mike to speak to us, right, Kathy?
Oh, yes. Now we have to do the thumb wrestling. Who gets who, right?
No, you're easy to work with. Yeah, whoever wants him first gets him. So your lady's first choice. So anyway.
Okay, you heard that, Mike.
Wisconsin.
Excuse me?
Mike, come back to Wisconsin, I said.
Oh, I'm sure he gets around. He's got family in Wisconsin, so he gets there. Well, I think this was fun. I learned a lot.
I do see one last question from Peggy I wanted to address about the terroir of the land being what matters, and absolutely, terroir is a complex thing, and when it comes to cheese, if you ask our cheesemakers, which we do, and it's in the book, you can get different answers about how the flavor of the cheese is impacted by the land, and it's related to what kinds of cows thrive on your land. That's related to climate. It's related to the water. It's related to the topography. But the strongest impact is the grass. A lot of these cheeses are from grass-fed cows, or goats or sheep, and the particular plant mix that grows is really critical for what the cheese will taste like. And so one of the people from Upland's Cheese, when we interviewed him, talks about how he's a grass farmer. Cheese is the mechanism for him to get that grass to people. But it's really all about what you're feeding the cows, what they're eating. Mike Evert just asked if we talked about the Milk Marketing Board trip.
Oh, yeah.
And we hadn't, so we can just go back real quickly. Leslie, do you want to talk about how we met Mike?
Okay, Keith and I blogged for over 10 years and talking about the food producers in this area. So we were invited by the Milk Marketing Board. I think they're just called Wisconsin Cheese now, maybe. And we had to drive to Madison and meet everyone at a hotel. And then they put us in like a luxury bus with like couches, and then only to drive back past our house, go through Highway 23 and go visit, went to all these cheesemakers place. So it was just really funny. And we were with people from like Saveur and Bon Appetit and just like all of these big food people. And we were like, I don't know, 24, 25 years old, and just really absolutely excited about the place where we live. And I just want to say that we still are. We still feel so excited, and we're so proud of this area and just everything. I mean, 1 hour is not enough to show how like the community interacts, how man and nature, and like how all these beautiful things are happening and can happen also.
So buy the book.
Yes.
And come to Mirror Point.
Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. And Nicole and all of you, I look forward to seeing you again and again and again at your wonderful shop. And can't wait to get some more food education from you folks. So
Thank you so much for setting this up, Scott.
Yeah,
thank you. And your book again is, I love it. And I love all the autographs I have. And it's
Good night.
good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.